Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're looking at someone truly iconic, a name synonymous with style, but whose life story is, well, way more complicated than the glossy brand suggests. We're talking about Gabrielle Chanel. Coco Chanel.
Absolutely. A legend in fashion, no doubt. I mean, she's the only designer on Time magazine's list of the 100 most influential people of the 20th century. That alone tells you something.
It really does.
But yeah, the woman behind the brand. It's a story of incredible self-invention, driven by, let's face it, fierce ambition and maybe a ruthless need to shape how the world saw her.
And that's exactly what we want to dig into today. She's the visionary who, literally freed women from corsets, introduced the sporty, modern chic that we still see traces of everywhere. But then there's this other side, the wartime activities, the collaborations, the, frankly, ugly business dealings using anti-Semitic laws. It's a real paradox.
It is. So our mission really is to trace that whole story. We're diving into the sources that cover her life from, extreme poverty to becoming this global powerhouse. We'll look at the fashion breakthroughs, of course, but also the drama, the secrets, the more controversial parts that shaped her legacy and maybe even saved it.
Okay, so let's frame it. How does a girl born in a poorhouse, abandoned by her father, end up redefining femininity, creating this massive fortune, only to then navigate or perhaps exploit a world war? And how did she survive the fallout?
It's quite a story.
We have to start at the beginning, the part she tried so hard to erase.
Yeah, that drive, that relentless ambition, it really seems to stem directly from her early life, which was incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
We know she was born in 1883 in Saumur.
But not just in Saumur, right? The specific location is key.
Exactly. Not a family home. She was born in a poorhouse, a charity hospital run by the Sisters of Providence.
That context is just foundational, isn't it? Her mother, Jeanne Devol, a laundry woman. Her father, Albert Chanel, an itinerant street vendor. Basically moving goods around town to town.
And he wasn't even there for the birth registration. The certificate just says he was traveling.
Which leads to this bizarre detail about her name.
Right, the misspelling. Because her mother was too sick and her father wasn't there, the name got registered as Gabrielle Chanel with an S.
Chanel.
Chanel. And what's truly fascinating, according to the sources, is that she never, ever legally corrected it.
Never. Why would she keep a misspelled name her whole life?
Well, the thinking is to correct it legally, she would have needed that original birth certificate.
The one that listed the poorhouse hospice.
Precisely.
Yeah.
So to avoid ever having to officially acknowledge that incredibly humble origin, she just lived her entire life as Gabrielle Chanel on paper. It's kind of an early sign of this fierce commitment to crafting a persona.
Wow, building the myth from day one, essentially. That sense of shame must have been a powerful motivator. And things got even worse, didn't they, when she was about 11?
They did. Her mother died, tragically young, only 32. And her father, well, he just abandoned the kids, all 6 of them.
Just left them.
Yep. Gabrielle and her 2 sisters were packed off to a convent orphanage in Aubazine.
Aubazine. And when you look at the Chanel aesthetic later, the simplicity, the black and white, the clean lines, you can almost see the influence of that place, can't you?
We absolutely can. Sources describe it as stark, frugal, very disciplined, run by nuns dedicated to caring for the poor.
So the black and white habits of the nuns.
The geometric patterns on the floors, maybe even the stained glass. These visual elements seem to echo later in the brand's DNA. But more than just aesthetics, Aubazine gave her something practical, something essential.
Which was?
She learned to sew. That technical skill honed in that very disciplined environment became the absolute bedrock of her future success.
Right. The actual craft.
Yeah.
So she had the skill, the discipline, and this burning desire to escape her past. When she left Aubazine at 18, the myth-making really kicked into high gear.
Oh, completely. She started rewriting her history almost immediately. She'd tell people her father hadn't abandoned them. No, he'd sailed off to America to make his fortune.
A classic adventurous tale.
Right. Or that she'd been raised by wealthy aunts, not in an orphanage. She even lied about her age, claiming she was born maybe 10 years later than 1883. Anything to create distance from that poorhouse reality.
She was literally designing her own life story before she designed clothes. The ambition wasn't just about fashion. It was about obliterating Gabrielle Chanel and becoming Coco Chanel.
Exactly. Using fashion as the vehicle for that transformation.
So after the convent, she initially worked as a seamstress. But that wasn't the glamorous escape she craved, was it?
Not quite. She had aspirations for the stage. She managed to get work in Moulin, performing in a cabaret, the kind frequented by cavalry officers.
Ah, the military connection starts early.
It does. She wasn't a star performer, though. She was what they called a poseuse, basically singing a song or two between the main acts, filler material.
And this is where the name Coco comes from.
This is supposedly where it originates. She sang songs like Who Has Seen Coco? Or maybe Coco Rico. That's the official story, the one she preferred, a cute nickname from the stage.
But there's another theory, isn't there? A less flattering one.
There is. Some sources suggest Coco might have been derived from cocotte.
Which means?
It was, well, common slang back then for a kept woman, a mistress. Given her audience of wealthy officers and her position, it's plausible. An uncomfortable association she probably couldn't shake, reflecting those early relationships.
So the nickname itself kind of hints at the path she was on. She had a youth, charm, maybe, but not really the singing talent to make it big.
No, her voice was described as marginal at best.
Yeah.
She tried to break into more serious stage work, even went to Vichy, the spa town, hoping for better opportunities.
Did that work out?
It didn't. She failed to get singing gigs and ended up having to take a job as a donneuse d'eau.
Serving water.
Yeah, literally dispensing mineral water to the spa's wealthy clients at the Grand Grill. Can you imagine? For someone trying to escape poverty and build a glamorous life, serving the very people she aspired to be.
That must have stung. But that whole scene, the cabaret, the wealthy men, it did lead to her first major patron, didn't it? Étienne Balsan.
Exactly. Balsan. He was a rich textile heir, former cavalry officer, classic type for the era. When Chanel was 23, she became his mistress. Actually, she sort of moved in and replaced the courtesan who was living with him.
Wow.
And she lived this incredibly indulgent life for about 3 years at his massive country estate, Royalou. Horses, diamonds, parties. The whole baubles of the rich life, as one source puts it.
Was she just enjoying the luxury, or was the ambition still simmering?
Well, initially, she definitely enjoyed it. But apparently, the idleness started to get to her. She began designing and making hats, maybe just as a hobby at first, something elegant ladies did.
Yeah.
But the real turning point wasn't Balsan himself. It was someone she met through him. While still technically Balsan's mistress, she started an affair with one of his friends.
And this was?
Arthur Boy Capel. Wealthy, English, upper class, and crucially, he had incredible style and seemed to genuinely recognize her talent.
So Capel was more than just another wealthy benefactor.
Much more. He didn't just shower her with gifts. He invested in her. He set her up in an apartment in Paris. And most importantly, he financed her first proper shops.
That's the key difference. Real startup capital.
Absolutely. And beyond the money, sources really emphasize his influence on her aesthetic. His own tailored, sort of masculine English-style clean lines, understated elegance that seems to have heavily inspired the early Chanel look.
You can really see that, can't you? That borrowing from menswear.
Definitely. There's even a story, though maybe apocryphal, that the iconic rectangular number 5 bottle was inspired by the shape of his whiskey decanter.
No way. The ultimate feminine perfume in a bottle inspired by a man's drink accessory. That's incredible.
It speaks volumes, doesn't it? Their affair was intense, lasted 9 years, even continued after he married someone else, an English aristocrat. His sudden death in a car crash in 1919 apparently devastated her. She reportedly said later, what followed was not a life of happiness.
Wow. But professionally by then, she was already standing on her own 2 feet, thanks to his initial help.
Yes. By 1910, she was a licensed milliner with Chanel modes on Rue Cambon in Paris. Her breakthrough came when the famous actress Gabrielle Dorziat started wearing her hats. That gave her real visibility.
And then came Deauville.
Right. The boutique in the fashionable seaside resort of Deauville, which Capel financed in 1913. This was huge. Deauville was where the rich went to relax, play sports. They needed leisure wear.
And this is where she introduces jersey.
Exactly. This is where she makes that revolutionary leap, introducing luxurious casual clothing made from fabrics like jersey and tricot.
Which, at the time, were seen as what?
Oh, incredibly humble. Jersey was for men's underwear, maybe sailors' uniforms. It was cheap, machine knit, comfortable, but definitely not the stuff of haute couture, which was all about heavy silks, satins, corsetry, structure.
So using jersey was just a complete departure.
It was radical. Partly born of necessity, World War I meant shortages of traditional luxury fabrics, but she brilliantly framed it as a modern choice. Fashion for women who moved, who were active. It was about comfort, ease, practicality.
And it worked financially.
Massively. She opened another boutique in Biarritz in 1915, catering to wealthy Spanish clients and others escaping the war. That shop was so successful that by 1916, she was able to pay Boy Capel back his entire initial investment.
Full financial independence.
Yes. By 1919, she wasn't just a milliner, she was officially registered as a couturière at 31 Rue Cambon. She had made the leap from mistress, cocotte, whatever you want to call it, to a bona fide creator and businesswoman.
So by the Roaring '20s, Chanel isn't just making clothes anymore. She's building an empire, on Rue Cambon specifically.
Yeah, she methodically expanded. By 1927, she owned like 5 buildings along that street, numbers 23 through 31. It allowed her to bring everything together, the couture house, the workshops, the boutique selling clothing, hats, accessories, jewelry, and eventually the perfumes. A totally integrated brand experience.
A whole world of Chanel.
Pretty much. And that world was deeply connected to the cutting edge of culture in Paris at the time. The artists, the musicians, the writers.
Right. She was moving in those bohemian avant-garde circles. People like Sergei Diaghilev, the Ballet Russ's impresario.
Exactly. And it was Diaghilev who introduced her to the composer Igor Stravinsky.
The Stravinsky connection. There was more than just friendship there, wasn't there?
Well, the sources confirm she housed Stravinsky, his wife, and his kids in her villa outside Paris, Bel Respiro, for about 9 months in 1920-21. And during that time, yes, they apparently had a brief affair.
But her support went beyond just providing housing, didn't it? She financially backed his work.
She did, significantly. She gave Diaghilev a huge anonymous donation, something like 300,000 francs, to guarantee the 1920 revival production of Stravinsky's revolutionary ballet, The Rite of Spring.
Wow, anonymously underwriting modern art, that's quite a power move.
It showed her influence wasn't just in fashion. She was also incredibly close with Missy Assert, a major socialite and muse in that artistic circle. They were apparently very tight, shared everything.
Including some darker habits.
Unfortunately, yes. The sources are quite clear that by the mid-1930s, Chanel had developed a serious morphine habit. Daily injections.
Daily morphine use while running a global fashion house. How is that even possible? The level of energy, the detail required.
It's honestly staggering. It points to this incredible, maybe terrifying level of control and compartmentalization she must have possessed. To maintain that kind of addiction, likely kept very private, while also managing such a demanding business, it's hard to comprehend. Extraordinary willpower, maybe, but in a very dark context.
Definitely adds another layer to her complexity. And speaking of powerful connections, her longest and perhaps most significant affair was with one of the richest men in the world.
Hugh Richard Arthur Grosvenor, the second Duke of Westminster, known as Bendor, immensely wealthy British aristocrat. Their relationship lasted about a decade.
And he absolutely lavished her with gifts, right?
Yep.
Jewels, property.
Oh, famously so. He gave her the land on the French Riviera where she built her villa, Bapauza. This relationship cemented her place in the highest echelons of society.
But it also had a darker side, didn't it, in terms of his views?
It did. The Duke was known for being fiercely anti-Semitic. And the sources suggest his virulent views likely reinforced or perhaps intensified Chanel's own existing prejudices against Jewish people.
Which sadly becomes very relevant later on.
Tragically relevant, yes.
Yet despite all the glamour and the potential title, she didn't marry him. Her reason.
Her legendary response. There have been several Duchesses of Westminster. There's only one Chanel.
That says it all, really. Her identity, the brand she built, was paramount. More important than any title.
Absolutely. Her ambition even took her across the Atlantic, briefly, to Hollywood.
Right. Samuel Goldwyn made her this incredible offer in 1931.
An astonishing offer. $1 million, which would be like $75 million today, to come to Hollywood twice a year and design costumes for major stars like Gloria Swanson and Ina Claire.
You think that would be a match made in heaven. French chic meets Hollywood glamour, but it didn't really work out.
No, it was kind of a culture clash. She famously dismissed Hollywood as the capital of bad taste, and it is vulgar.
Ouch.
Her designs, which were all about subtlety, understatement, and ease of movement, just didn't translate to the big screen the way producers wanted. They were considered sensational enough. Hollywood wanted costumes that screamed glamour. Chanel provided clothes that whispered elegance.
It shows her unwavering commitment to her own aesthetic, even when faced with massive money and influence. Okay, before we get to the iconic designs themselves, we have to talk about the deal that would haunt her. The perfume deal.
Ah, yes, Parfum Chanel. Created in 1924, this was a partnership with the Wertheimer brothers, Pierre and Paul. These guys were heavy hitters in French business, experts in luxury production and distribution.
They put up the money.
All of it. They financed the manufacturing, the marketing, the local distribution network needed for something like Chanel No. 5 to become a phenomenon.
And Chanel's cut for lending her name, her brand, the scent itself.
Just 10% of the stock. The Wertheimers took 70%. The remaining 20% went to the department store owner who initially brokered the deal. And this deal became a major source of bitterness for Chanel.
Only 10%. You can see why she'd be upset.
She felt cheated. For decades, she resented it, trying to renegotiate, trying to gain control. She famously called Pierre Wertheimer the bandit who screwed me. This deep-seated financial grievance, combined with her anti-Semitism, it sets the stage for her actions during the war.
A ticking time bomb, really. Okay, let's pivot to the positive genius now. Her revolutionary design contributions. It's hard to overstate their impact.
Absolutely. Let's start with the jersey suit. We touched on the fabric machine knit, previously humble. Using it for high fashion was revolutionary in itself.
Because a lot of movement, right.
Exactly. It draped, it was comfortable, it defied the stiff, structured clothing women were expected to wear. She was designing for the modern women who drove cars, played sports, worked. Functionality was key.
Then there was the Slavic influence. Where did that come from?
Through her connections with Russian exiles in Paris, particularly Grand Duchess Maria Pavlovna, who ran an embroidery house called Kitmir. Chanel collaborated with her, incorporating Russian folk motifs, intricate embroidery, elements like the peasant blouse, the rubachka, even the babushka headscarf. It added this exotic, rich texture to her minimalist designs.
A very modern mix of high and low, east and west, and of course the little black dress. Does she invent black?
No, obviously women wore black before.
Yeah.
But she made the little black dress an iconic staple. When American Vogue featured one of her simple black crepe de chine dresses in 1926, they famously compared it to the Ford Model T. Meaning it was simple, accessible, modern, stylish, and almost universally applicable. It became a kind of uniform for chic. She democratized elegance. As she apparently boasted, it allowed women who weren't rich to walk around like millionaires.
Incredible leveling power through simplicity. And then the ultimate Chanel icon, the Chanel suit.
The tweed suit. Introduced a bit later, but refined over decades. It was engineered for comfort. Soft tweeds, often lined with silk or jersey, and crucially, no restrictive darts at the bust, no stiff interfacing, no built-up shoulder pads like other designers used.
And she was obsessive about fit and movement, wasn't she?
Completely. There are stories of her making models climb onto stools as if stepping onto a bus, or bend down low like they were getting into a sports car, all during fittings. She wanted to ensure the suit moved with the woman, never against her.
Fashion design for real life. What about jewelry? She changed that too.
Radically. She championed costume jewelry, mixing huge, fabulous fake ropes of faux pearls, Byzantine-style cuffs with real gemstones. Before her, wearing fake jewels was considered tacky. She made it chic, a statement of style rather than just wealth, blurring those lines again.
Like the famous Maltese cross cuff she did with Verdura.
Exactly, inspired by jewels given to her by lovers like the Duke of Westminster, turning personal gifts into fashion statements.
And finally, a couple of enduring symbols. The bag.
The Chanel 2.55 bag. She introduced quilted bags earlier, but the iconic version came out in February 1955, hence the name 2.55. The key innovation was the chain strap.
Which freed up women's hands.
Precisely. Inspired, supposedly, by the chains the nuns at the Aubusine orphanage used to carry their keys on their belts, and the quilting. Inspired by the jackets worn by jockeys at the racecourse. Again, taking practical, even humble elements and making them luxurious.
And one last thing, she popularized the suntan.
Yeah, that's a fascinating cultural shift. Before Chanel, pale skin was the ideal for aristocratic women. It showed you didn't have to work outdoors. Chanel got accidentally sunburned on a yacht trip on the Riviera, came back tanned, and suddenly a tan became fashionable.
Why?
It flipped the symbolism. A tan now meant you had the leisure time and wealth to lounge around on beaches and yachts. It became a status symbol of the privileged, leisured class. She literally changed the perception of skin color in Western fashion.
An absolute force. But as the 1930s ended and war clouds gathered, that force, that ambition, took a much darker turn. So 1939, war breaks out, and Chanel makes this drastic decision regarding her fashion house.
She closes it down, shuts the doors on her couture business, putting about 4,000 women out of work. Her stated reason was that it was not a time for fashion.
But there might have been more to it.
Well, many biographers connected directly to the major worker strike that happened at her maison just 3 years earlier in 1936. Her employees had demanded better wages, better conditions, part of a larger labor movement in France.
So the closure could have been retaliation.
It's certainly interpreted that way by some. A way to punish the workforce that had challenged her absolute authority. She kept the perfume and accessories business running, but the couture side, the heart of the house, was shut.
And where did Chanel herself spend the war years during the Nazi occupation of Paris?
Not exactly roughing it. She chose to live at the very luxurious Hotel Ritz on Place Vendôme.
The Ritz, which during the occupation was
the preferred headquarters for high-ranking German military officers and Nazi officials in Paris.
So she's living in luxury, surrounded by the occupying power.
Yes, and it was at the Ritz during this time that she began a long-term romantic relationship with a German officer, Baron Hans Gunther von Dinklage.
Von Dinklage. Who was he, exactly? Not just some soldier.
No, not at all. He was a German diplomat, yes, a former Prussian officer, but critically, he was also an experienced intelligence operative, a spy working for the Abwehr, German military intelligence.
A relationship with an enemy spy while living in the German HQ, that's incredibly compromising.
To say the least. And it leads us directly to one of the most shocking episodes. Her attempt to use the war and Nazi laws to seize control of her perfume business.
Right, the battle for perfume. This goes back to that bitter 10% deal with the Wertheimers.
Exactly. Her long-simmering resentment against Pierre Wertheimer, fueled by her anti-Semitism, saw an opportunity in the Nazi occupation. The Nazis had implemented Aryanization laws designed to confiscate Jewish-owned property and businesses.
And the Wertheimers were Jewish.
They were. So, in 1941, Chanel formally petitioned the German authorities. She used the Nazi racial laws, claiming that Parfum Chanel was still legally the property of Jews and had been abandoned. She literally asked the Nazis to give her full ownership to repair the prejudices she felt she'd suffered.
She tried to use Nazi genocide policy to win a corporate fight. That's chilling.
It's absolutely ruthless. A calculated move leveraging horrific circumstances for personal gain.
Did it work?
Ultimately, no. The Wertheimers, anticipating this exact danger, had been incredibly smart. Way back in May 1940, before the situation got truly dire, they had legally transferred ownership of Parfum Chanel to a non-Jewish French businessman, Félix Amiot.
A Christian businessman?
Yes, an airplane manufacturer they trusted. He essentially acted as an Aryan frontman, holding the company in name only throughout the war. So when Chanel made her move in 1941, the company wasn't technically Jewish-owned anymore. Her petition failed, although she didn't find that out until later.
Wow. So the Wertheimers outmaneuvered her. But her involvement with the Germans didn't end there, did it? It went deeper into actual intelligence work.
It did. After the war, declassified French intelligence documents confirmed her role. She was registered as an agent for the Abwehr.
An actual registered agent?
Yes. Her code name was reportedly Westminster, probably playing on her well-known connection to the Duke, and she was assigned an agent number, F7124. She was officially on their books.
Agent F7124. And this led to a specific mission. Operation Modellhut.
Operation Modellhut, yes, meaning model hat in German. This was a highly sensitive plan cooked up in late 1943, early 1944.
What was the goal?
It involved Chanel working directly with Walter Schellenberg, a very senior figure in the SS intelligence service, the SD. He was Reinhard Heydrich's protege, later head of foreign intelligence for the unified RSHA, a major Nazi player. Chanel apparently even helped support him financially after the war.
Working with the SS leadership, what were they trying to do?
The plan was for Chanel to use her connections in high society, specifically her acquaintance with the British ambassador in Madrid, Sir Samuel Hoare, who was known to be friendly with Winston Churchill.
Okay.
The idea was for Chanel to travel to Madrid and try to persuade Hoare to act as a back channel, to explore the possibility of a separate peace negotiation between the Western Allies and certain factions within the Nazi regime, particularly the SS. Schellenberg thought her connection to Churchill, however tenuous, made her a potential asset.
A separate peace negotiated through Coco Chanel, that sounds completely outlandish.
It does, but desperate times. Apparently, she even traveled to Berlin with von Dinklage to discuss this plan with SS officials.
Did the mission go ahead?
It started, but it failed spectacularly. Chanel recruited an intermediary, a woman named Vera Bate Lombardi, to help facilitate contact in Madrid. But Lombardi, who wasn't fully briefed on the real purpose, grew suspicious. When she got to Madrid, she went straight to the British embassy and denounced Chanel and her associates as Nazi spies.
So Lombardi blew the whistle?
Blew it wide open. The whole operation collapsed.
Okay, so after the liberation of Paris in 1944, with all this documented involvement, the relationship with Dinklage, the attempt to seize the company, Operation Modellhut being Agent F7114, what happened to Chanel, surely she faced charges for collaboration.
You would absolutely think so.
Yeah.
Thousands of French citizens faced severe punishment, public humiliation, imprisonment, even execution for collaboration, often for far less clear-cut activities. Chanel was interrogated by the Free French Purge Committee, the FFI, in September 1944, and she was released almost immediately. No charges were ever filed.
Released? Just like that? How is that possible?
Well, the explanation seems to lie with the highest levels of Allied power. Chanel's own grandniece later claimed, quite directly, Churchill had me freed.
Winston Churchill personally intervened.
That is the strong suspicion, supported by circumstantial evidence and historical analysis. The theory is that Churchill stepped in to prevent a public trial.
Why would he do that? To protect a fashion designer, even one he knew socially?
Probably not about protecting her. It was likely about protecting British secrets. If Chanel had been put on trial and forced to testify under oath about her wartime activities, her contacts, her missions,
she might have revealed embarrassing or compromising information.
Exactly. Information about the pro-Nazi sympathies or wartime dealings of certain high-level British officials, members of the aristocracy, perhaps even connections reaching towards the royal family. A public scandal involving such figures was something Churchill likely wanted to avoid at all costs, especially right after the war.
So her silence was bought, essentially, by ensuring her freedom. Her survival wasn't due to innocence, but due to political expediency at the very top.
That seems to be the most credible explanation based on the available sources. Politics protected her where justice might not have, but the story wasn't over yet, especially regarding the Wertheimers.
Right. They get their company back after the war, thanks to Amiot holding it for them, but now they have a huge problem.
A massive PR problem. Their biggest asset, the name Chanel, belongs to a woman who is now known, at least in intelligence circles and potentially wider, as a Nazi collaborator, Agent F7124, who tried to steal their company using anti-Semitic laws. If that story gets out.
The entire brand could be destroyed. The name Chanel would be toxic.
Exactly. So, driven by the need to protect their massive investment and the brand's image, the Wertheimers did something extraordinary.
He renegotiated the perfume deal again.
They did in 1947. But this time, the terms were astonishingly favorable to Chanel. They basically bought her silence and cooperation for the future.
What did she get?
She received a lump sum payout equivalent to roughly $12 million in today's money. Plus, and this is a truly incredible part, she was granted 2% of the gross profits from all sales of Chanel No. 5 worldwide in perpetuity.
2% of all Num 5 sales globally. That must be an astronomical amount of money.
Estimates put it around $34 million a year in recent times, flowing to her or her estate. It made her incredibly wealthy, far beyond what she earned from couture.
And there was more, wasn't there?
Yes. Perhaps the final irony. The Wertheimers also agreed to pay all of Coco Chanel's living expenses, everything, for the rest of her life.
So the bandits she railed against ended up funding her entire existence and securing her financial legacy, all to protect the brand she founded but almost destroyed.
It's one of the most complex and cynical resolutions in business history, perhaps. Her name was saved, her fortune secured, not by clearing her name, but by making it too valuable to tarnish.
So, after the war and that extraordinary settlement, Chanel essentially went into exile.
Yes, she moved to Switzerland in 1945. Lived there quietly for the most part for nearly a decade. She spent some of that time with von Dinklage. She even sold her famous villa La Pausa in 1953. It seemed like she might be retiring from the fashion world for good.
But the fashion world hadn't stood still. Paris couture in the late 40s and early 50s looked very different from her pre-war heyday.
Completely different. It was dominated by male designers, especially Christian Dior and his New Look, which launched in 1947.
The New Look being
very structured, very feminine in a traditional sense. Cinched waists, padded hips, full, heavy skirts, elaborate construction. It was beautiful, in a way, but also restrictive, sort of the antithesis of everything Chanel had stood for.
And Chanel herself, what did she think of it?
She apparently despised it. She saw it as impractical, illogical, as she put it. She hated the corsetry, the padding, the sheer weight and restriction of it all. To her, it felt like a step backwards, undoing the freedom and comfort she had championed for women.
So this reignited her ambition.
It seems so. That, combined perhaps with boredom and the fact that her name was still globally famous thanks to the perfume, she became convinced that women wouldn't put up with these restrictive clothes forever. she decided it was time for a comeback.
At over 70 years old.
Yes. In 1954, after being out of the couture game for 15 years, she returned to Paris to reopen her fashion house.
Which required significant funding, presumably. Who backed her this time?
In another twist of irony, it was Pierre Wertheimer, her old adversary, now her silent partner and benefactor. He realized that a revived Chanel couture house, even if not hugely profitable itself, would only enhance the prestige and sales of the massively profitable Parfums Chanel. It was a smart business move for him.
So Wertheimer bankrolls the return. How was the comeback collection received?
It was really interesting, a split decision. The French press was very critical, very cool towards her. They hadn't forgotten the war years. The collaboration stories were still circulating. They saw her designs as maybe dated, out of touch.
But elsewhere?
The American and British press loved it. They hailed it as a return to sanity, to comfort, to modernism. American Vogue, under editor Bettina Ballard, was particularly supportive. They saw the ease, the youthfulness, the practicality, and championed it.
So the international market, especially America, saved her comeback.
Pretty much. American buyers and media embraced the classic Chanel look, revived and updated. That success eventually forced the French press to acknowledge her renewed relevance. She was back.
And she continued working for many more years. How were her final decades?
She remained incredibly driven, working constantly. But sources describe her as becoming increasingly solitary, imperious, even tyrannical in her later years. Living and working out of her suite and atelier connected to the Hotel Ritz.
A lonely figure at the top.
That sounds that way. She died there at the Ritz on a Sunday evening in January 1971. She was 87 years old. Apparently she'd gone for her usual long drive the day before. Disciplined to the end.
And her reported last words.
Quite famous and quite chilling. She apparently turned to her maid and said simply, "You see, this is how you die."
Wow. Just matter of fact. Controlled even in death.
It fits the persona, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And even after her death, the controversy wasn't quite over.
What happened?
Initially, there were plans for a major state tribute supported by the French First Lady. A hero's farewell. But then, more detailed information and documents about her wartime collaboration started to surface more publicly.
And the grand funeral plans were?
Quietly dropped. The full extent of her wartime activities made a state-sponsored hero's tribute politically impossible.
Yet, despite all the shadows, her legacy in fashion is undeniable, isn't it? What are the absolute core contributions we remember?
Oh, absolutely undeniable. She fundamentally changed how women dressed in the 20th century, killing the corset and the extreme silhouette, giving us the little black dress as a timeless staple.
The Chanel suit, still an icon of comfortable, powerful dressing.
The popularization of jersey and comfortable fabrics in high fashion, the chicness of costume jewelry, the camellia flower as a recurring motif, even the suntan as a symbol of leisure.
She gave women a kind of modern, uniform, practical, elegant, empowering movement and freedom.
That's perhaps her greatest, most positive legacy. Freedom through fashion. Hashtag, tag, tag, outro.
Yeah.
So looking back, it's just an extraordinary trajectory. Gabrielle Chasnel, the orphan from the poorhouse, transforms herself into Coco Chanel, the absolute arbiter of global style. It's a story powered by sheer will, immense talent, and, let's be honest, some very complex and often morally dubious choices in relationships.
It really is the ultimate story of contradictions, isn't it? You have this pioneer who genuinely liberated women through her designs, the simple suits, the LBD, the functional bags. She gave them a new kind of physical freedom. But at the same time, she actively collaborated with the Nazi regime. She was Agent F7124. She tried to use their horrific laws for personal gain. The liberator was also, in some capacity, working with the ultimate oppressors.
And her success, her brand survival, it wasn't just built on her design genius, was it? It was actively salvaged. First, by Churchill's political intervention, preventing a potentially devastating public trial.
Right.
And second, by the Wertheimers' calculated financial decision to protect the brand's image and their investment by essentially buying her silence and funding her life.
Which brings us to the final thought for you, our listeners. Chanel's iconic status, her enduring legacy, was ultimately protected not just by her talent, but by powerful forces making pragmatic decisions to shield the brand from the uncomfortable truths of her past.
So, the question it leaves us wrestling with is this. When an artist or creator achieves that level of cultural significance, does it somehow excuse or transcend the darker parts of their history? Can we or should we ever fully separate the art from the artist, the fashion from the fascist undertones, especially when the survival and prosperity of that art were arguably dependent on obscuring those very undertones?
A difficult question with no easy answers. Something to think about. Thank you for joining us on The Deep Dive.